think about what one does about the economic and political system under which we've lived really since Reagan, and this real upsurge in which the money in the country and the capital in the country goes upward, the solution to that seems to me to be quite different than the solution to what you do about the open looting we're seeing going on. If you were trying to tell the American people what your solutions are to either or both of those, what would you focus on? I mean, for me, I look at where we've been and I say, we need to have a progressive tax code again. That really does get rid of the Trump tax cuts and the George W. Bush tax cuts. That would do a heck of a lot for the deficit and so on. But what would you say about what is the legislative answer to both of those problems?
Yeah. So I would say sort of two fronts as well. I mean, some of it, as you said, progressive tax code is very much needed. I mean, we see right now, and when we look through how both labor and capital are perceived and engaged by our taxes, we see a country that very clearly rewards those with capital more than they do those that are producing labor and working and this idea that you work hard, you play by the rules, you'll be able to live a life of dignity and decency. That's no longer the case. And as a father of an 8-year-old and 10-year-old, I got two little boys. Like, I worry about what kind of America they're going to grow up in, because this younger generation could very well be the first generation in modern American history where they are not going to have more opportunities and more prosperity than their parents' generation. I look to my parents 50 years ago. They immigrated here because they really did see America as the place where there was a guarantee of that generational progress. And that has very much stalled out, because, in large part, because of how our tax code, how our resources, as well as how our economy has been geared towards rewarding capital primarily. And you see that in terms of how it's affected healthcare, and something so fundamental to all of us, yet it is something that has been the source of so much challenge. I will share this. My father's health is declining rapidly, and I've spent a lot of time with him over the last couple weeks. And it has been financially catastrophic for my family to go through this, as well as just emotionally, of the challenge of health. And so many families, they experience this type of catastrophe, and has caused so many of them to lose their homes, lose their jobs. And you see how fragile our system is towards those in need, and how just bare it has become in terms of the support where people can turn to. And that is a shame. We're the richest, most powerful country in the world. We should not be a country where, because of one's health crises, that people become homeless and lose their life savings. And we see how challenged we are with so many elderly retiring without the proper amount of money for them to be able to live that life of dignity. It's sad. The other side of it, just real quick, is on the politics side. How do we fix this? And I will say, I have seen a huge challenge here because of special interest. It is every bit, if not worse, than what I imagined coming into politics. The big money in politics, the super PACs, the lobbyists, the way in which it controls how the agenda is set here, the way in which it can immediately put pressure upon legislators to turn away from some of these ideas that we hold deep. It is disgusting, honestly, and it has been very disheartening to see it up close. It has strengthen my resolve to stand up to it. But it is one of those moments where, like, when you think about how much damage Citizens United did to our democracy, and the idea that the remedies there in full would require changing of the Supreme Court or a constitutional amendment, it doesn't give you that many tools, and it's difficult. But those need to happen in concert. The lack of a functioning democracy that has been captured by special interest and some of the wealthiest in this country That is what's standing in the way of us being able to legitimately engage in the type of political debate and progress that we need to here in Congress. So the two have to go in concert.
So, what would you say to Americans who agree with you and want to help you make the changes that you are talking about? What should we do?
Well, I think we have to assess this moment that we're in right now. I mean, I'll go back a little bit and say, I talked about how, the Republican Party has collapsed. It has been captured by this MAGA movement. And so, say what you will about Donald Trump, he is a movement leader. He is somebody that it's more than just a political leader of a party. And as a result, we're not in normal times. We're not in political times. This is not a moment right now where we can simply think about political parties engaging with one another and the normal life cycle of politics. I believe that this is a moment for movement building and to think about our actions beyond just politics, beyond just bills and resolutions in Congress and the normal. I say that in part because my my rise into the Senate, it was very improbable. It was unexpected. I am in the Senate initially by virtue of a corruption scandal, as my predecessor, Senator Menendez, indicted for gold bars. But also beyond that, I came up through a political system in New Jersey that is very corrupt. And it's corrupt in part because of the Democratic Party. And I had to stand up against my own party and take on the machine politics in New Jersey to even be able to be here in the Senate. And through that experience, it was very powerful because there were a number of times when I didn't think I could prevail. And I remember, all of my Democratic House colleagues didn't support me. I was excommunicated essentially from the Democratic Party. I was radioactive for a while. Um, and I remember this one person told me, you should just drop out. There's no chance that you can be able to win. You should just drop out and save your career. And I said to them, I don't think I would be able to look my two boys in the eye if I stepped aside, knowing full well that I believe that I'm the stronger candidate and the stronger public servant. So I persevered. But what we had to do was to go outside of politics. And we built an anti corruption movement here in New Jersey. We built something that was very powerful and it crossed ideological spectrums. I can't tell you how many independent voters and Republicans supported what I was trying to do and respected me for standing up even to my own political party when I thought they were doing something wrong. That is giving me some glimpses. And I'm not going to tell you that I know the perfect way to do this nationally, but that 84% of people in New Jersey who believe that elected officials are corrupt, the 70 some percent around the country that believe that politics is corrupt, that is a very large coalition. You can think about it in that way, of trying to engage to be able to push forward and think through how to create the kind of movement and coalition that can stand up and try to restore a sense of trust when the vast majority of people think that this whole system is broken. And so what we saw with the grassroots movement this past weekend, that was extraordinary. But what next? How do we have not just attention, you need sustained attention. Because right now we live in a moment where if there's a mass shooting, there's this spike of attention and calls for action. But my colleagues in the political system, they're trained now to just wait. They just wait because they know that the tension's going to drop and that they can just wait it out. And that's again where the special interest and the power concentration is to their advantage. The only power that the American people have is for sustained and focused attention, and that requires movement building.